Some things don't have explanations. Not because we haven't looked hard enough, but because the closer you look, the less sense they make. Tonight I'm sharing 3 stories sent to this channel by real people, from real places, with real details they can't account for. Stay with me. The tenant in 4B. I moved to Akron, Ohio in late October of 2019. I was 26, newly divorced, working nights as a pharmacy tech at a 24-hour Walgreens on South Arlington Street. The apartment complex was called Ridgewood Pines, which sounds nicer than it was. 2 floors, 8 units, a parking lot that flooded when it rained. My unit was for A. The apartment directly above me was 4B. The building manager told me 4B had been vacant for 3 months. Something about a lease dispute. He said it casually, the way you do when you're not thinking about how it sounds. I wasn't thinking about it either. I just needed a place. The first week, I heard footsteps upstairs. Slow, deliberate ones. Not pacing, more like someone walking a specific path, over and over. From what I could map out, they'd start near the front door, move to the kitchen, stop. Then back again. I figured someone had moved in. I didn't ask. By mid-November the footsteps had a schedule. They started at 2:40 a.m. every single night. I know because I get home from my shift around 2:30, and by the time I'd taken off my coat and set my keys down, there they were. Right on time. I went upstairs once. Knocked on 4B's door. Nothing. The hallway smelled like something mineral. Like wet concrete or a basement after rain. I stood there longer than I should have. The footsteps had stopped the moment I knocked. I pressed my ear to the door, and I heard breathing. Slow. Measured. Right on the other side of the wood. I went back downstairs. I told myself it was an animal. A squatter. Pipes. I told myself a lot of things that month. Then in December I ran into my neighbor from 4C, a retired woman named Carol who'd lived there 11 years. I mentioned the footsteps, sort of laughing it off. She didn't laugh. She told me the man who'd lived in 4B before the vacancy had died there. Natural causes, they thought, but he wasn't found for almost 2 weeks. She said she used to hear him walking at night back then too, same pattern, she said. Kitchen to door. Kitchen to door. I asked her what his name was. She said she never knew it. He never spoke to anyone. She said, and this is the part one keep turning over, she said the walking started before he died. I moved out in January. I drove past Ridgewood Pines once about a year later, just by accident, taking a wrong turn. The lights in 4B were on. I don't know if anyone had moved in. I didn't stop to check. The next story comes from Montana, and it began at a funeral that may not have been attended only by the living. She came to the funeral. My grandmother passed in August of 2021. She lived in Billings, Montana her whole life, 83 years, same county, same faith, same circle of people. The funeral was small. Immediate family only, her words. There were 11 of us at the graveside service. I counted, because I'm the type of person who counts. My mother, her 2 brothers, 5 cousins, a pastor named Dale, and a woman we didn't recognize. She was standing just outside the canopy. Older, maybe mid-70s, in a grey dress that looked wrong for the season. It was 94 degrees that day. She had her hands folded in front of her and she was watching the casket. I assumed she was a neighbor. A church friend. Someone my grandmother had known in a way we hadn't. After the service, I walked over to speak with her. She was gone. Not gone like she'd left early and I'd missed her. Gone like she simply wasn't there anymore. The field around the cemetery is flat. Open. You can see a car leaving from 200 yards. There was nothing. I mentioned her to my mother that evening. My mother went very still. She asked me to describe the woman. I did. Grey dress, white hair, folded hands, standing just outside the canopy on the east side. My mother put her fork down. She said that description, almost word for word, matched my grandmother's older sister, Ruth. Ruth had died in 1987. A car accident on I-90. She and my grandmother had been estranged for years before that. A falling out no one in the family ever fully explained. I've looked at photos of Ruth since then. Old ones from the 70s and early 80s. I can't say for certain it was her. But I can't say it wasn't. What I keep coming back to, what I can't put down, is that she wasn't watching us. She wasn't watching the pastor or the flowers or any of us standing there. She was watching the casket. And her expression wasn't grief. I don't have a word for what it was. Our final story tonight was submitted by a landowner in Harlan County, Kentucky, and what he found on his trail cameras changed how he uses that property. What the trail camera caught. I own about 40 acres of land in Harlan County, Kentucky. Mostly wooded, some creek bottom, a cleared patch where I keep a garden and a small outbuilding. I hunted every fall, whitetail, mostly, and I'd been running trail cameras out there for 5 seasons without incident. September of 2022, I set up 3 new cameras along the main deer corridor. Browning cameras, motion activated, infrared night mode. Nothing fancy. I check them every 2 weeks. The first pull was normal. Deer, a raccoon, a coyote moving through at 3 a.m. The second pull, one of the cameras had captured something I couldn't immediately categorize. It wasn't an animal. The timestamp read 1:17 a.m. on a Tuesday. The image showed the tree line about 30 feet out, and standing in the middle of the frame was a figure. Upright. Roughly human proportions. But the posture was wrong. The head was angled too far forward, like the neck was straining toward the camera. The arms were at the sides but slightly raised, not lifted, just elevated. A few degrees off from natural. I told myself it was a person. A hiker. Someone cutting through the property at night. But I'd never seen anyone out there in 5 years. And the land is posted. I checked the next image. Same camera, 1:18 a.m. 1 minute later. The figure was closer. Significantly closer. Maybe 15 feet from the lens now. The image after that, 1:19 a.m., was just trees. The figure was gone. I went out to that spot the next morning. I was looking for footprints, bent brush, anything. The ground was soft from recent rain. There was nothing. No impressions. No disturbed leaves. I pulled the camera and repositioned it to cover the same area from a different angle. Wider view. 3 weeks later I pulled it again. The figure was there again. Same time, 1:17 a.m. Same posture. Same slow approach across 3 consecutive frames. But this time the wider angle caught something the first camera hadn't. There was a second figure. Standing at the tree line. Not moving. Just watching the first one approach the camera. I haven't been back to that property after dark since. I've shown the images to 4 people I trust. None of them have said anything I found comforting. One of them, my brother-in-law, who doesn't believe in anything he can't measure, looked at the photos for a long time without speaking. Then he handed my phone back and said he thought I should sell the land. He didn't explain why. I didn't ask. 3 stories. 3 people with no reason to fabricate and no explanation to offer. That's what makes them stay with you, are not the details themselves, but the space around them. The parts that don't resolve. If something has happened to you that you can't account for, leave it in the comments. I read every one. If you want more stories like these, subscribe, new ones arrive every week. And tonight, when the house gets quiet, try not to count the footsteps.